that we can reduce human trafficking. It is, one person being trafficked is way too many. But it really does truly take not only us in the criminal justice community, but the residents across this state to assist us as well. So please utilize those platforms to make us aware of human trafficking that is ongoing in your area. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm Andrew Salazar. I am the Special Agent in Charge for Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, here in Detroit. And as you've already heard, in order to truly fight human trafficking, partnerships are key. And so I want to start by thanking and extending my gratitude to the Michigan Attorney General's Office, Michigan State Police, the St. Clair Shores and Sterling Heights Police Departments, TSA Investigations, and all of our law enforcement partners who assisted in today's operation. As you've heard, this morning we had a joint successful operation into a human trafficking investigation. Right now, our special agents, victim assistance specialists, forensic interviewers are working to gather more evidence and ensure these victims receive the care and services they need. HSI stands committed to combat human trafficking, not just here in Michigan, but across the nation and around the world. Our efforts rely on strong partnerships with local, state, federal law enforcement and our non-governmental organization partnerships. This way we can hold traffickers accountable and protect victims. At HSI, we follow a victim-centered approach, placing as much importance on supporting survivors as we do on prosecuting the criminals. This approach ensures victims have a voice and the resources they need to rebuild their lives. I'm immensely proud of the work our team does every day to dismantle trafficking networks and deliver justice for those who cannot speak for themselves. Together, we are sending a clear message. Human trafficking will not be tolerated in our communities. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Paul Plaza, Deputy Chief, St. Clair Shores Police Department. Again, thank you to all the law enforcement partners we have. I think this is a great example of see something, say something. In our town, at least, it started off with residents or citizens seeing something suspicious, taking that step to report it. Our detectives investigated, found out that it was much larger than we suspected. And again, having the cooperation of all the law enforcement community, federal, state, county, all levels, our detectives did a fantastic job, along with all officers. So for the officers out there on the street, the ones conducting the search warrants, making the traffic stops, thank you for your hard work. This is a problem that probably goes on more than people realize. It is important, again, I'll reiterate, when you see something that looks suspicious, there's probably something to it, please report it. There's agencies that will, as we did, investigate it and use the resources available to conclude this and get victims to safety and arrest those who need to be arrested. So, again, thank you very much. That's all I have.
All right. Well, with that, I guess we'll take some questions.
Yeah. Can you please talk about the victims? I think you say 7 to 9.
Right.
And where are they from?
They're from China and also from Korea. We've not established yet whether it's North or South Korea or both.
And have they helped at all? I don't know if there's a language barrier, but have they been able to talk about how they ended up where they are?
Right. I mean, that's the hope, right? This just happened, and obviously we were prepared for there to be a language barrier, so we wanted to make sure that we had language access available so that those conversations could be had, and they're being interviewed, but also being provided housing, and of course we want to make sure that in the event they need medical attention, that we're doing that and that they're taken care of. And I will say, one of the big challenges to prosecuting human trafficking cases is that these folks are scared. They're terrified, and we want to do everything we can to make sure that they feel as safe and secure as possible. But those interviews and those conversations are being had as we speak.
And I'm sorry, finally, do you believe that they were brought to the U.S. Illegally?
Yes. I mean, not illegally. They're here legally, correct?
They're here legally.
Right.
They're here legally.
Correct.
Yeah, Alyssa.
Is there any investigation into people who may have visited massage parlors at all?
I think that part of the investigation obviously will be if there's any record keeping, and any potential crimes will be investigated from there. I mean, I will say this: these illicit massage parlors, they're only profitable because they have customers, right? And I think it's an important message to people who frequent these types of massage parlors. And let me be very clear, if you're at an illegal massage parlor, you know it. It's not a surprise. In the case of some of these parlors that we're talking about, when you have to get buzzed in, it's probably illegal. When the women who are performing the massage are wearing lingerie, it's probably illegal. When they offer you a menu of services that are sexual in nature, it is definitely illegal. So we want to make sure that people understand this is not a victimless crime. It's very much a crime that involves people who are victims of some of the most horrendous behavior you could imagine. I mean, these are folks that are kept in these buildings. They're not allowed to leave. They were even taken to gyms just for the purposes of showering and then brought back. They don't have a life. This is their entire life. And it's a terrible way to live. So if you are frequenting an illicit massage parlor, you are creating more victims.
Yeah, Gino.
Thank you. That being said, can you talk about the effort to go after individuals who patronize these types of illegal establishments?
That's going to be part of the investigation.
So when people were calling about seeing things suspicious, what exactly were they saying? Like, what did they report exactly?
Sure. Well, sometimes you got to be careful because of where the source of information may come from. But a lot of things are associated with people at these massage parlors. You don't see employees come and go like you normally would. So a lot of times they may stay at these places during odd hours. You don't see them coming and going to work like you would normally see. The kind of clientele as well that you see going in. When you have weekly massages, perhaps at the same people, that might be an indication. And then word gets out. It's hard to keep that quiet for too long. People speak, and some people who hear these things take a stand and report it. So that's what happened in our case. Someone saw something suspicious. They didn't see a business operating as it normally should. Hard to kind of put that together, but when something doesn't seem right. Surveillance is conducted, and we move forward from there.
Yeah.
Do you think there are other operations within this ring still in Michigan or other states?
I think it's likely, yes.
All right. Well,
Can you describe just how sophisticated this network is to, stay out of sight from authorities?
Well, I don't know that they did stay out of sight from authorities, but
I mean, how long were they operating before it was discovered?
Well, without giving too much detail, because most of the detail has to come out in court, I will just say that this is an operation that involved crossing state lines. So you have individuals who do not live in the state of Michigan, and they would be coming in to Michigan, making their rounds, going to the casino to launder their money, and then exiting the state of Michigan. So these are buildings that don't get a ton of the only people coming and going into these buildings are people who are asking for the illicit massages. So it's not something that is going to be in everybody's face. These are buildings that are not necessarily marked for the purpose that they are there for.
yeah, Hillary.
Is there some way to characterize how ubiquitous this is? This is the first time we've heard about massage parlors, clearly, where there's illicit activity going on. Is there a way to characterize how ubiquitous you think this activity is?
Oh, I mean, we think it's widespread. It's just, again, these are difficult crimes to prosecute. And that's probably why you don't see, more investigations and prosecutions. And again, part of it has to do with the fact that you have victims that are, very reluctant to testify, and where it's difficult for them to do so, especially here where you have people who, they're not from the United States, they might not have anybody at all here, and may have been promised something in exchange for coming here, and that they might be able to work off a debt that they could never actually work off. So this again is one of the reasons why we're asking the legislature to please pass these laws that make it much easier for us to prosecute these cases. There are a lot of barriers right now, and the legislature could do something to make it easier, and to make sure that we are targeting the right people. The last thing that we want to be doing is to be charging people who are victims of human trafficking with criminal offenses. But unfortunately, in the past, that's something that has happened all too frequently, because they are the most obvious person who has committed some sort of crime, but really, again, they're victims. They're being trafficked. They're not there voluntarily. They're not there because they want to be engaged or involved in this kind of conduct. So I think it's a significant problem, and hopefully, again, we'll have more tools available in order to be able to expose that and to be able to stop some of these parlors from continuing to engage in this trafficking activity. And I'm really grateful for all the partnerships that you see up here. And for the purposes of my office, I'm particularly thankful for the hard work of Melissa Palapu, who's only been in this position for about a year now, and has done some tremendous work. And I'm hoping that people will hear this, see this, and know that if you are engaged in human trafficking through one of these illicit sex parlors, it's only a matter of time, hopefully, before we discover you.
And were there any additional raids that occurred prior to this morning as part of your investigation?
As part of this investigation? No. Well, okay, just a second. No.
Melissa?
Will there be any efforts to reunite victims with their family members or anything like that?
Well, they don't have family members here.
Okay. Yes.
They would have to go home for that, right? But there's a special visa, a T visa, it's called. And it's expressly for the purposes of making sure that people are not getting deported if they are human trafficking victims. So they will be provided with those. I don't want to speak for HSI, but
Yeah, they're entitled to certain, if they're here illegally now, so they'll be entitled. The federal law allows for a short-term permission to stay, and then a longer term, which is a T visa for victims who've been identified as victims of human trafficking held against their will.
I have another one from Gino, and we'll do a couple more if there are.
Attorney General Nessel, you mentioned that new legislation will make it easier to charge these types of crimes. Can you maybe just mention what legal mechanism you might be talking about that would make things make your life easier?
glad that you asked. I have the list here. So what these bills do is they give prosecutors additional tools to hold traffickers accountable, while also provided the much needed support and tools for survivors in Michigan to reclaim their lives and to move forward. And how do we do that? By allowing survivors of human trafficking to have criminal convictions set aside if those offenses were a direct result of their victimization. They provide an affirmative defense for survivors if a crime was committed as a consequence of being trafficked. And you heard me say earlier, we're not sure how many victims there are, right? Sometimes you have people who have been trafficked, but then they move to another station where they're actually now part of this criminal enterprise that is, holding people captive. So, that is an issue. Modifying safe harbor protection for minors who are victims of sex and labor trafficking. It sets criteria for expert testimony in human trafficking cases. It would add to the hearsay exception and allow for such statements to come in if they were made not only by a victim of domestic violence, but also a victim of human trafficking. It would expand the reach of the statute that allows for admission of other prior similar acts to include admission of other acts of commercial sexual activity, prostitution, and human trafficking instead of only domestic violence or sexual assault cases. And it would help hold perpetrators of these crimes accountable by allowing jurors to consider an abuser's or traffickers' true nature or the abusers and traffickers' plans regarding human trafficking offenses. Now, so I'm wrapping up my 6th year as Attorney General of this state. So that's 3 legislative terms that we've tried to get this legislation through. There is no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse for these laws not being passed. Again, we have a little bit more time in lame duck. We've already made it through one chamber, and I'm asking the House of Representatives to do their job and to help us pursue these heinous crimes and to assist survivors of them.
Yeah, Melissa.
Were any of the victims minors involved in this area?
No, not that we discovered today.
Ed, you want to close us out?
You have people here from state and local agencies, some from the federal government, and you talked about people moving from state to state, overseas. Does the U.S. Attorney's Office have an interest in these types of cases? Does that matter? Would that help? I mean, these are very complicated efforts. I'm wondering why some of this isn't in federal court.
Well, I mean, we will probably be discussing this case with the U.S. Attorney's Office and seeing how we can work, further in collaborating in terms of federal crimes and state crimes. But at this point, we were the lead agency in terms of prosecuting agency. We obviously both have authority, right? We have state laws, and we have some pretty significant laws when it comes to human trafficking. But we work with federal partnerships and we charge these particular cases. There may be other crimes that can be charged by the U.S. Attorney's Office. We'll see.
All right. Hearing no more, thank you all very much for joining us today. As we had mentioned, we do have papers coming from the back of the room now. If you would like one of those fact sheets, we're all set. Put your hand way up there. Kim's going to hand you one. That's going to have your defendant names and spelling, articulation of